A Navy SEAL braved the worst blizzard in 50 years, only to discover his family's betrayal was nothing compared to the addict's secret. Snow hammered the mountains as former SEAL Noah Carter followed a mysterious inheritance to a frozen mansion no one had entered in decades. With his loyal canine ranger at his side, he stepped into a home filled with echoes, hidden rooms, and a secret so massive it would shatter everything he thought he knew about his family and himself. The wind rattled the thin aluminum walls of Noah Carter's trailer, like skeletal fingers scraping down a tin can. It was late afternoon, but the sky outside was already dimming to a bruised gray, the kind of sky that warned anyone with sense to stay indoors. Noah sat at his small kitchen table, the surface scarred with knife marks and coffee rings, patching a tear in Ranger's vest. The old sewing kit lay open beside him, its plastic hinges cracked from age. Ranger, his loyal German shepherd, rested on the floor with his chin on Noah's boot, watching every movement with patient eyes that had seen the same battles Noah had. Noah pulled the needle through the fabric with careful precision. Years of field repairs made the motion familiar. Steady hands, steady breath. But even in the familiar actions, there was a heaviness in his chest that felt harder to ignore with each passing winter. 7 years since he'd left the Navy SEALs. 3 years fighting the VA system. A lifetime trying to convince his family he wasn't broken. Ranger shifted closer, sensing the tension tightening Noah's shoulders. The small burner stove clicked as the pilot light sputtered, barely keeping the trailer warm. Snowflakes drifted against the single-pane window, like white ash from an old memory. The Sawtooth Mountains loomed beyond the clearing, jagged silhouettes rising into the storm, both beautiful and unforgiving. Noah had just finished tying off the stitch when his battered cell phone buzzed across the tabletop. Unknown number. He ignored the first vibration. Calls from unknown numbers usually meant someone trying to sell something, or someone trying to collect something. But it buzzed again, persistent. Ranger lifted his head, ears pricking. "All right," Noah muttered, wiping his hands on a rag before picking up the phone. "Carter? Mr. Noah Carter?" The voice was crisp, professional, the tone of someone who worked behind polished desks and perfectly organized folders. "That's me. This is Laura Mitchell from the law office of Winters and Hale. I'm calling regarding the estate of Miss Evelyn Grant." Noah blinked. Evelyn Grant. The name floated up from the dusty corners of his memory like a photograph faded by time. He'd heard it once as a kid. His mother had mentioned her, some distant relative, an older woman who lived far away, someone the family didn't talk about. "I'm not sure you have the right Carter," Noah said carefully. "Oh, I do," Laura replied. "Ms. Grant named you as the sole beneficiary of her primary residence, a property located at Hollow Ridge approximately 30 miles north of your current address." Noah stared at the table, the patched vest, the chipped coffee mug. "Beneficiary? That doesn't make sense. It's all in the documents, Mr. Carter. The transfer is effective immediately. You've inherited the entire estate." Before he could respond, a click sounded from the other end, and the call ended. Noah lowered the phone slowly, staring at the blank screen as if it might offer an explanation. 30 miles north, into the mountains, into the storm. The trailer door burst open with a gust of freezing air as someone stomped up the wooden steps. Noah didn't need to look to know who it was. Jared's voice arrived first, sharp and mocking. "You're joking, right?" Jared said, stepping inside without waiting to be invited. Snow clung to his boots and beard. "Melissa just called me. Said you told her some lawyer said you inherited a mansion." Noah rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I didn't tell her. She must have overheard the call somehow." "Well, she's laughing her head off," Jared snapped. "A mansion? From a woman nobody in this family even remembers? You sure you're not mixing up your meds?" Ranger stood, muscles coiled, positioning himself between Noah and Jared. "Back off, Jared," Noah said quietly. Jared smirked. "Look at you. Can't even take a joke. You think some rich relative left you anything? You're the family screw-up, Noah. You always were." Noah clenched his fists. The old hurt stung sharper than the cold. "Just leave." Jared shrugged. "Fine. Freeze out here in your fantasy. Enjoy your mansion." He slammed the door on the way out, and the trailer fell silent again, except for Noah's shallow breathing and the rising howl of the wind. Ranger pressed against Noah's leg, grounding him. Noah took a deep breath, then another. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, steady. "Let's go see what this is about, boy." Ranger barked once, sharp and confident, as if to say he'd already been waiting. Noah grabbed his coat, his gear bag, and the vest he'd just finished repairing. He opened the door, and the blizzard slapped him across the face with icy fury. The road ahead was disappearing beneath white sheets, but something inside him, something faint and long buried, pushed him forward. Hope. He loaded Ranger into the truck, started the engine, and pulled onto the snow-covered road. The storm swallowed them whole as they drove toward Hollow Ridge, toward answers, toward something he never expected to find, toward a future he didn't yet dare to believe in. The snowfall thickened until it looked like the sky was pouring white sand instead of flakes. The windshield wipers beat frantically, smearing more than clearing, and the headlights pushed only a few feet into the swirling wall of snow. Ranger sat in the passenger seat, upright and alert, his breath fogging the window. Every so often he glanced at Noah, sensing the storm building inside his partner just as clearly as the one raging outside. Noah gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles whitened. The vibration of the tires against the icy road hummed beneath him, but his mind wasn't fully in the truck anymore. The storm's chaos triggered a familiar feeling, one he'd worked for years to control, but never fully escaped. A memory flashed like lightning. A metal door blown open, sand whipping into his face, Ranger leaping ahead on command. A deafening blast, a fireball swallowing the night, a teammate screaming his name. Noah blinked hard, forcing his eyes back to the snowy road. "You're all right," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to himself or Ranger. "It's just the storm." Ranger placed his paw on Noah's arm, steady and warm. The pressure snapped Noah back into the present. The dog's amber eyes held the kind of calm only a creature forged by discipline and loyalty could give. The wind howled against the truck, rocking it slightly as they climbed a narrow mountain pass. Noah eased off the accelerator, jaw tightening. He hated how much the storm reminded him of the desert, the blindness of sandstorms, the unpredictability, the feeling that danger could come from any direction. Different climates, same fear. He cleared his throat. "You ever get tired of pulling me out of my own head, buddy?" Ranger's ears perked, and he gave a short, gruff sound, as if answering. Noah exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I know. 1 mile at a time." The road curved sharply, and the truck's back end fishtailed. Noah reacted instinctively, counter-steering, easing off the brakes, letting the tires catch grip. Ranger braced himself, steady as stone. Once the truck straightened, Noah rested his head against the seat for a moment, letting his heartbeat settle. Snow pounded the windshield like handfuls of gravel. The world narrowed to the thin strip of road ahead, lit only by headlights swallowed by the storm. Every mile deeper into the mountains felt like traveling into another world. One more silent, more forgotten. He thought about the phone call he'd received. The voice of the lawyer replayed in his mind, clear and polished. Evelyn Grant. Beneficiary. Mansion. Immediate transfer. Noah shook his head. The idea was surreal. He'd grown up in a house where no one had extra space, extra money, or extra kindness. No relative had ever offered him anything, certainly not a mansion hidden somewhere in the mountains. So why him? Ranger shifted, settling more comfortably but keeping his gaze forward. Noah reached over and scratched behind the dog's ear. "Wish you could tell me what to expect up there," he murmured. Another flash of memory broke through, this one quieter. A night back on base. Ranger had nudged Noah awake from a nightmare, refusing to leave until Noah's breathing calmed. Out there, in the worst places on Earth, they'd only survived because they trusted each other more than anything. Thunder cracked above the mountains, not from lightning, but from shifting snow. Noah's eyes darted up as he spotted a trail of powder sliding down a nearby ridge. Small now, harmless, but a reminder the mountains didn't care who you were or what you carried in your past. The truck's heater groaned, blowing air that was more lukewarm than warm. Noah rubbed his hands together. "Can't wait to get stuck with you in some old mansion," he said, trying to lighten the moment. "Maybe it'll have one room without drafts." Ranger huffed a soft, approving sound. Another sharp turn, this time with no guardrails. The blizzard erased the drop-off beside the road, leaving only swirling white, like the world ended just inches from the tire. Noah's chest tightened again. The sensation was familiar. Pressure without pain, fear without reason. He breathed through it. "In through the nose," he said quietly. "Out through the mouth." Ranger nudged him with his head, reminding him to focus. The storm only worsened, but the road began widening slightly. Noah saw a faint wooden sign nearly buried in snow. Hollow Ridge, 12 miles. 12 miles felt like 100 in these conditions. He whispered, "Almost there." Minutes later, a gust of wind slammed into the truck, rattling Noah's nerves. Snow burst across the windshield, and for a moment everything disappeared. Road, trees, sky. Just white. His pulse spiked. Flashbacks slammed into him with brutal force. Dust clouds, bodies running, Ranger barking, gunfire echoing. Noah slammed his palm against the dashboard. "Not now," he hissed. Ranger barked sharply, snapping him out of the freeze. The road returned as the wind shifted. Noah exhaled, wiping cold sweat from his brow. "Thanks, buddy. You always know when to pull me back." The dog lowered his head, watching Noah with quiet understanding. The last few miles crawled by. Snow piled in waves across the road. The truck's tires struggled, slipping but pushing forward. The blizzard roared around them, but finally, the incline leveled out. Through the storm, the outline of something massive shimmered into view. Stone towers, shadowed windows, a roof laden with mounds of snow. The Hollow Ridge mansion. Noah slowed to a crawl, staring up at the dark silhouette. "Guess this is it," he whispered. Ranger stared too, ears alert, posture tense. Whatever waited inside those walls, it had been calling them through the storm. And ready or not, they had arrived. Noah eased the truck forward, tires crunching through the fresh snow that blanketed the long, winding driveway. The storm muffled everything. Trees, sky, even the sound of the engine. It felt like driving through a world that had been swallowed whole. Ranger pressed his nose against the window, fogging the glass with each breath as his eyes tracked the towering mansion coming into view. Hollow Ridge stood like a fortress carved from the mountain itself. Massive stone pillars flanked an arched entrance, and tall windows stared blankly into the storm like watchful eyes. Snow had piled so high against the base of the walls that it nearly touched the lower window panes, and icicles hung from the roof like frozen daggers. Noah parked near the steps and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was overwhelming, broken only by the wind sweeping across the valley. For a moment, he simply sat there, staring at the mansion's dark silhouette. Something about it felt familiar, though he had no memory strong enough to explain why. "Come on, buddy," he said finally. Ranger jumped out first, his paws sinking deep into the snow. He sniffed the air, tail low, ears forward, alert, but not afraid. Noah followed, immediately hit by the sting of the cold. Snowflakes clung to his eyelashes and beard as he zipped his jacket up to his chin. The front steps creaked beneath their weight. Noah found a rusted iron key hidden beneath a loose stone on the porch, exactly as the lawyer had told him. He paused, the key cold and heavy in his hand. "This place is ours now," he murmured, still unsure if he believed it. He slid the key into the lock. It turned with a loud click, and the front door pushed inward with a groan, sending a small avalanche of snow spilling into the entryway. The air inside hit Noah like a wall, a bitter, bone-deep cold that seeped through his clothes instantly. Ranger trotted in, sniffing every corner, his nails tapping softly on the hardwood floor. Noah lifted his flashlight and swept it across the entrance hall. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, its wooden railings carved with intricate patterns of leaves and vines. A chandelier the size of a small car hung above them, its crystals yellowed with age. Dust-covered furniture loomed like ghosts under white sheets, and faded paintings lined the walls, their colors muted by time. Cold air drifted through the mansion in unsettling waves, brushing past Noah like unseen hands. Ranger growled softly. "Easy," Noah whispered. "It's just an old house." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. The wind outside kicked up, rattling a loose shutter upstairs. The echo traveled through the empty rooms like the mansion itself was sighing. Noah stepped farther in, each footstep releasing a small puff of dust. He felt the weight of the silence pressing around him, heavy and expectant. They moved deeper into the hall. Ranger stopped suddenly, stiffening, head turning sharply toward a dark corridor on the right. "What is it?" Noah asked. Ranger lowered his body, muscles tensing. A low growl vibrated in his chest. Noah raised his flashlight and aimed it down the hallway. Nothing but darkness. He took a few cautious steps forward. The beam of light cut through the dust, illuminating old portraits, antique tables, and a long runner rug that looked older than he was. Then Noah saw it. Halfway down the corridor, near a cracked mirror leaning against the wall, the dust on the floor was disturbed. Not by rodents or animals, by something bigger. The pattern was unmistakable. Footprints, fresh ones. Noah's breath caught. He crouched down, examining them. The prints were boot-shaped, larger than his own. The dust had been pushed aside recently enough that the edges hadn't softened. "Someone's been here," he whispered. Ranger moved closer, sniffing the ground with quick, sharp breaths. His hackles rose. Noah stood slowly and scanned the walls again. No other sounds, no movement. But the air felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. He forced himself to move forward, following the trail. The prints led toward a pair of double doors at the end of the hallway. The brass handles were tarnished black. Noah reached out, swallowed hard, and pushed them open. The room beyond was a grand dining hall. Dusty chandeliers stretched across the ceiling. Long curtains hung limply beside window panes frosted with ice. The massive oak dining table was covered in a thick layer of dust, except for one spot where someone had brushed it aside. Noah's stomach tightened. "Someone got in here before us," he murmured. Ranger paced the room, nose close to the ground, tail rigid. A sudden crack thundered through the house, making Noah whirl around with his flashlight raised. The sound echoed above them, sharp, like a board snapping under weight. It came from the second floor. Noah steadied his breath. "We stay together," he told Ranger. He flashed the light upward, illuminating the banister overlooking the hall. The shadows seemed deeper there, darker than the rest of the room. The storm outside surged again, and the windows rattled as if something pressed against them. Ranger barked once, sharp and alert. Another creak answered him, this time slower, heavier, like someone shifting their weight on old floorboards. Noah swallowed hard. "Yeah," he whispered. "We're not alone." He tightened his grip on the flashlight and took a step toward the staircase, every instinct on high alert. Whatever waited upstairs wasn't wind, wasn't imagination, wasn't harmless. And tonight, Hollow Ridge was no empty mansion. It was alive, with something watching them from the shadows. A gust of wind struck the windows, shaking loose a spray of powdered frost. But Noah knew that wasn't what Ranger reacted to. The dog's body had stiffened, ears forward, tail straight, a perfect silhouette of alert readiness. Years of working together meant Noah trusted Ranger's instincts more than his own. Noah lifted his flashlight toward the grand staircase. Each wooden step groaned faintly under the weight of age. The ornate banister curled upward like a dark spine leading into the unknown. The beam of light trembled slightly in Noah's hand. The cold was biting deeper now, settling into his bones. "Stay close," he whispered. Ranger moved ahead slowly, sniffing the air, paws silent against the worn carpet. Noah stepped onto the first stair. Soft creak. The sound echoed into the hollow depths of the mansion, making the silence feel heavier, thicker. Halfway up, Noah paused. The air changed, colder, sharper. A faint scent drifted down the hall above, stale dust mixed with something else, something metallic. He remembered that smell from busted open lockers and abandoned buildings overseas. He scanned the landing at the top. The flashlight caught a row of portraits lining the walls. Stern faces from another era, their eyes following him as he moved. Ranger stopped at the last step, nose twitching rapidly. "What is it, boy?" Noah murmured. Ranger looked left, then right, then suddenly locked on a hallway to the right. He gave a low, controlled bark. Noah turned his light toward the hallway. The beam illuminated swirling dust in the air and long-forgotten furniture draped in sheets, shapes that looked like sleeping giants under cloth. But something else caught Noah's eye. The dust on the floor was disturbed again. A trail. Boot prints. Fresh ones. They led toward the far end of the hallway, disappearing around a corner. Noah's heart pounded harder. "Somebody's been living in here," he whispered to himself. "Or hiding." Ranger moved forward with slow, deliberate steps. Noah followed, every instinct screaming to stay alert. The flashlight revealed cracked wallpaper peeling away in strips, exposing wooden planks beneath. The wind howled outside, rattling loose window panes like fingers tapping glass. They reached the end of the hallway. A floorboard snapped loudly behind them, sharp and sudden. Noah spun around. No one. Nothing but the darkness swallowing the staircase. He swallowed tightly. "Old house settling," he said under his breath, but the words felt thin. Ranger didn't buy it. He growled low, deep, not in fear, but in warning. Noah pressed on, turning the corner. The light swept across what looked like a sitting room. A stone fireplace dominated the far wall, cold and filled with ash. A broken grandfather clock stood frozen at 3:17, its pendulum hanging crooked. The footprints led inside. Noah and Ranger entered cautiously. Noah moved toward the fireplace, checking the floor. The dust looked brushed aside in places, as though someone had knelt there. He reached out and touched the ash. It was ice cold. Something else caught the light. A single boot print leading out of the room, but none coming in. He froze. "That's not possible." Ranger's bark cut through the silence, sharp, urgent. Noah pivoted. Ranger stood near a tall wooden door on the opposite side of the room, paw pressed against it, nose shoved into the crack at the bottom. Noah rushed to him and pushed the door open. It groaned loudly, swinging inward to reveal a narrow, unlit corridor. The air inside was colder still. So cold, Noah's breath fogged instantly. Ranger bristled. Noah pointed the light down the hall. The beam landed on a broken chandelier lying across the floor like fallen bones. Beyond it, the corridor was lined with cracked paintings, landscapes of the mansion grounds long before time had claimed them. More footprints dotted the dust. Then, Noah's light caught something that made him stop breathing. A portrait at the end of the hallway. A woman with dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the same intense blue as his own. Evelyn Grant. He stepped closer, drawn toward it. The painting's colors were faded, yet her expression felt alive, stern, thoughtful almost, watchful. A cold draft swept past him. The chandelier chains clinked softly, as if something brushed against them. Ranger barked again, closer to a warning than ever before. Noah backed away from the portrait, eyes scanning the shadows. He wasn't alone. Whether it was a person hiding somewhere in this labyrinth of halls or simply his mind reacting to the cold and the memories he carried, Noah didn't know. But he and Ranger had survived harsher things together. He steadied his breath. "We'll clear the rest tomorrow," he whispered. "We need to warm up first." Ranger didn't move. He stared into the dark hallway, ears locked forward, body stiff. Noah gently placed a hand on his back. "Tomorrow," he repeated softly. They retraced their steps cautiously. Noah kept the flashlight trained behind them, half expecting someone, or something, to emerge from the shadows. When they reached the stairs, the wind outside let out a long, eerie whistle. The temperature inside felt like it had dropped another 10 degrees. As they reached the last step, Noah glanced over his shoulder one last time. Footprints in the dust, a snapped floorboard, a portrait of a woman who seemed almost alive. Something was wrong inside Hollow Ridge. Terribly wrong. And the mansion wasn't done showing them that tonight. Snow hammered the windows as Noah and Ranger made their way back through the dim corridors. But the cold inside Hollow Ridge felt even sharper than the storm outside. The mansion held its breath, walls groaning subtly, floors whispering beneath their steps. Noah kept scanning the shadows, half expecting those footprints to reappear, half fearing he'd see someone standing in the dark. They reached the great hall again. Noah shut the double doors behind them, as if closing them could somehow keep whatever was upstairs from following. Ranger stayed glued to his side, moving with slow, deliberate caution. Something about the house unsettled him deeply. Noah had seen Ranger face down danger overseas without flinching, but here, his muscles tensed at every sound. The flashlight beam flickered as Noah crossed the hall. "Not now," he muttered, tapping it until it steadied. He needed every sliver of light he could get in this cavernous place. A gust of wind slammed into the front door, shaking the entire frame. Snow spilled through the small gap at the bottom. Noah inhaled sharply, his breath clouding in the icy air. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a cold-blooded beast watching him from the corners of its old bones. Ranger nudged him, urging him toward something. Noah followed the dog's lead down a side hallway he hadn't noticed before, narrow, with a low ceiling and peeling wallpaper. It felt different from the rest of the house, as though this section had been forgotten even by time. Ranger stopped at a tall bookshelf pressed against the far wall. He sniffed heavily along the bottom, then looked back at Noah, tail stiff. "What is it?" Noah whispered. Ranger pawed at the lower corner of the bookshelf. Wood scraped against wood as the shelf shifted slightly. Noah blinked. "You've got to be kidding!" He set the flashlight down, grabbed the edges of the bookshelf, and pulled. It resisted for a moment, then slid forward with a grinding moan, revealing a narrow opening behind it, a hidden staircase. Cold air poured out of the dark passage like breath from a deep cave. Ranger barked once, more in confirmation than fear. Noah picked up his flashlight again and aimed it upward. Wooden steps rose into darkness, steep and uneven. A thin layer of dust coated them, but Ranger's nose told the truth. Someone had passed through here more recently than the house's age would suggest. "All right," Noah murmured. "Let's see what else you're hiding." They climbed the narrow stairs, each step creaking softly under their weight. The walls closed in tightly, making the space feel more like a tunnel than part of the mansion. The air grew colder with each step until Noah could see his breath clearly. After what felt like far too many steps for a normal attic, the staircase opened into a vast room stretching across the entire length of the mansion's roofline. Noah's flashlight swept across the space, jaw dropping as the attic revealed itself. Rows of wooden trunks lined one wall, labeled with dates going back more than 70 years. Tall metal shelves held hundreds of boxes, each neatly stacked and marked. Ancient furniture was stored beneath thick sheets, their shapes hinting at forgotten eras. Blueprints, rolled tightly and bound with twine, rested on a long work table. A layer of frost edged many of the surfaces, glimmering like crystals in the faint beam of light. But none of that compared to what sat against the farthest wall. Noah felt his heartbeat slow. "Ranger, you seeing this too?" Against the back wall, embedded into the stone itself, sat a massive steel door, the kind you'd find in old banks or military facilities. Circular, thick, unyielding. Frost clung to its edges. Brass bolts and metal intricacies filled its face, crafted with precision far beyond what a typical mansion attic should contain. It looked completely out of place, and completely intentional. Noah approached, steps careful, flashlight trembling slightly in his grasp. Ranger walked beside him, nose twitching, tail lifted but rigid. The vault door towered over them. Its cold metal surface gleamed under the beam, revealing an engraving at eye level. "For the one who carries the burden." Noah traced his fingers over the words, skin prickling. The phrase felt pointed, personal even, like Evelyn Grant had carved the message for him and him alone. But why hide a vault in an attic? Why embed a door like this into a mansion built long before such technology? And why leave it for him? He stepped back, shining the flashlight around the attic again. On the long work table beneath a dusty lamp, he noticed something tucked under a stack of brittle papers, blueprints for the mansion. He unrolled one, smoothing it carefully. The sheet detailed secret passageways and reinforced structures throughout the estate. Hollow Ridge wasn't just a mansion, it was a fortress with secrets in every corner. Ranger suddenly trotted to another corner of the attic, barking softly. Noah followed quickly. The dog had found an old crate with its lid slightly ajar. Inside were leather-bound journals, dozens of them. Noah lifted one, its cover cracked with age. On the first page, in elegant handwriting, was a name. Evelyn Grant, 1949. As he flipped through the pages, he saw drawings, maps, names, and coded entries. Notes about family betrayals, notes about money disappearing, about being forced out, about building something that no one could take from her. The journals connected to the vault. Everything Evelyn did, every secret she kept, led up to this attic. Ranger nudged Noah again. The dog stood facing the vault door, staring at it as though he sensed something important behind it. Noah exhaled. Whatever's inside, she really didn't want anyone else getting to it. Another gust of wind rattled the boards overhead. Outside, the storm shrieked through the trees. But inside the attic, the cold felt deeper, more deliberate, like the mansion itself was watching him discover secrets long buried. Noah placed his hand flat against the vault door. The metal hummed faintly under his touch, vibrating as though reacting to him. Or maybe it was the storm outside shaking the structure. He couldn't be sure. But one thing was clear. Hollow Ridge had been waiting for him, and the attic held only the first piece of the mystery Evelyn left behind. Cold air spiraled around them, and somewhere deep in the mansion, a floorboard cracked loudly, as if in warning. Noah stepped back, steadying himself. "We're not done, boy," he whispered. "Not even close." Ranger stayed locked on the vault, unmoving. Whatever secrets this place held, they were no longer silent, and the attic was only just beginning to speak. Noah let his fingers linger on the cold metal of the vault door before stepping back. The attic felt different now, charged, like static before a storm. Ranger's nose twitched as he paced, weaving between old trunks and crates, tracking scents only he understood. The wooden rafters above creaked with the weight of ice, and snow hissed against the roof, a constant whisper that blended with Noah's steady breathing. He knelt beside the crate of journals Ranger had discovered. The leather covers were dry and cracked, some nearly falling apart. He chose the most intact one and opened it carefully. The pages were thin, browned with age, but the handwriting was elegant, precise strokes from someone who took pride in every letter. Evelyn Grant, 1951. Noah turned the page. The early entries were simple. Notes about the changing seasons, sketches of the valley below, lists of repairs she needed to make. But as he moved deeper into the journal, the tone shifted. The writing grew tighter, more urgent. April 12th. The family wants what I built. They always have. But I see it clearly now. Greed runs deeper than blood. They intend to force me out. They think I'm weak. They forget where I come from. Noah's breath caught. He flipped ahead. Entries from the 70s, 80s, and 90s filled with patterns. Betrayal, rebuilding, planning. Every few pages, lightning bright bursts of hope shone through. Moments where Evelyn wrote about creating something that would last. Something no one could take. And then one entry struck him still. November 2005. I saw a name in the paper today. A young man injured in training, Noah Carter. I recognized the eyes. The same eyes his mother had. The same eyes I once had before the family took everything. He carries the burden of our bloodline, the good and the painful. If he survives the world's cruelty, perhaps one day, what I built will belong to him. Noah blinked hard. His throat tightened. She knew me, he whispered. Ranger nudged his knee, sensing the shift in emotion. Noah gently closed the journal and reached for another. This one was thinner, tied shut with a faded blue ribbon. When he untied it and opened it, a folded piece of paper slipped out and landed beside him. He picked it up carefully. The paper was brittle, edges flaking. Written in Evelyn's unmistakable hand was a short poem. 4 numbers hold my legacy still, not in order of joy or ill. The place was built in 27. The acres spread like God's own heaven. A heart was joined in 48, and freedom claimed in 98. Noah read it twice. Dates, he murmured. Events. Ranger pawed the edge of the poem as if urging him to look again. House built in 27. Acreage is 43. Lawyer mentioned that. Marriage in 48. And freedom, whatever she meant, in 98. It was a puzzle. A combination. The vault. Noah stood, poem in one hand, flashlight in the other. Ranger followed as they crossed the attic floor back toward the looming steel door. The metal seemed even colder than before, as though it had absorbed the chill of decades. Noah traced the combination dial with his fingers. His training kicked in, pattern recognition, calm breathing, hands steady despite the bitter cold. All right, he said. Let's think. The poem didn't say the order, just that the numbers mattered. He tried the first logical sequence. 27, 43, 48, 98. The dial resisted. No click, no movement inside. Ranger growled faintly, as if disagreeing. Yeah, I figured. Noah tried the reverse, then another permutation. Nothing. He leaned his forehead against the cold door, exhaling slowly. What were you trying to tell me, Evelyn? Ranger nudged him again, then sniffed a spot on the floor near the vault, something Noah hadn't noticed. A sliver of wood jutted out just slightly, the corner of a loose floorboard. Noah knelt. Good boy. He pried the board up with the edge of a rusted tool lying nearby. Beneath it was a small wooden box wrapped in cloth. Inside lay a single sheet of paper folded neatly. He unfolded it. For the one who carries the burden. When you seek the truth, follow the order of my life, not the structure of the house. Begin where I began. Noah's breath quickened. Where you began, he whispered. Your beginning, your marriage. He positioned his hand on the dial again. 48:27, 43:98. The dial turned, clicked, turned again. Another click. Noah froze. Ranger's tail wagged once. A slow, deep sweep. Come on, Noah breathed. He turned to the last number. The dial clicked hard, like something heavy fell into place. Noah stepped back, heart racing. With a deep metallic groan, the vault unlocked. But it didn't open. Not yet. A second locking mechanism, hidden until now, slid open inside the wall with a thunderous clang that echoed through the attic beams. Ranger barked, the sound bouncing off the rafters. Noah placed his hand on the wheel handle. Ready? He whispered. Ranger pressed against his leg, steady as always. Noah inhaled, braced himself, and pulled the heavy steel door toward him. The vault began to open, slow and deliberate, revealing a darkness so deep it swallowed his flashlight beam whole. Evelyn had chosen him. And now, whatever she'd left behind was finally within reach. The vault door groaned open, releasing a wave of cold air that felt untouched by time. Air sealed away for decades. Noah held the flashlight steady as the beam pierced the darkness, revealing the outlines of shelves stretching back farther than he expected. Ranger took one cautious step forward, sniffing the threshold, before glancing back at Noah for permission. Go on, Noah whispered. I'm right behind you. They entered together. The first thing the light touched was gold, bars of it, neatly stacked on industrial shelves, each piece stamped and gleaming even under layers of dust. Noah blinked hard, as if the sight might vanish if he looked too long. He moved the light slightly to the right. Rows of old metal boxes sat beneath the gold bars, each labeled in Evelyn's neat handwriting. Bonds, certificates, deeds. He opened one box with trembling fingers. Inside lay sheets of thick paper, preserved perfectly inside plastic sleeves. Government bonds from the 1950s. Stocks from companies Noah recognized instantly. Apple, Microsoft, Tesla. Shares purchased when each company was barely known. Certificates for land in multiple states. Titles for properties across Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Noah's breath caught. This can't be real. Ranger nudged his arm with gentle insistence, grounding him in the moment. Noah moved deeper inside. Shelves on the left held velvet pouches filled with rare coins. Solid gold, silver, pristine condition. The shelves on the right held sealed envelopes, dozens of them, each with handwritten labels. Insurance policies, appraisals, investments, private letters. The deeper he went, the more surreal it became. In the far corner, under a small spotlight mounted on the wall, still working after all these years, sat a wooden box tied with a faded ribbon. Noah approached it reverently, sensing its importance. He untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a single envelope, crisp and cream-colored, with his name written in delicate cursive. Noah Carter. His throat tightened. The air around him seemed to still. Even the storm outside faded to a distant hum. He opened the envelope carefully. The paper inside was thick, the ink slightly smudged as if written with a shaking hand. My dear Noah, if you are reading this, then the weight I carried has finally passed on to the one capable of bearing it. You do not know me well, but I have known of you for many years. I watched your strength when others tried to break you. I saw how you stood alone with dignity, just as I once had to. What you see here is the result of decades spent building a life no one could steal from me again. A life meant for someone worthy, someone who understands hardship without resentment, someone who carries the burden with honor. Do not fear this gift. Use it wisely. Use it freely. But above all, use it to reclaim the future that was denied to you. You are the legacy our family never deserved, but always needed. With hope, Evelyn Grant. Noah lowered the letter slowly, eyes stinging. The flashlight beam wavered as he blinked repeatedly. Ranger sat beside him, leaning gently into his leg. She believed in me, Noah whispered, voice breaking in a place he hadn't let break for years. She actually believed in me. Ranger rested his paw on Noah's knee, steady and loyal, offering the comfort only a battle-tested partner could give. Noah inhaled shakily, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know what to do with all this, he admitted softly. But she trusted me. She really trusted me. He took a slow walk around the vault again, letting the reality sink in. The gold alone was worth millions. The rare coins, millions more. The stocks, the ancient deeds, the private investments. Evelyn had built a quiet empire across her lifetime, one hidden from the world. Noah had always felt like he was swimming upstream, fighting systems that never cared about the scars he carried, visible or not. Fighting to survive, to remain whole. Now, standing in a vault untouched by time, he felt something he hadn't felt since before deployment. Hope. And fear. Fear of what this meant. Fear of losing it. Fear of being unworthy of such a gift. He rubbed Ranger's head, grounding himself again. We'll figure it out, buddy. One step at a time. Ranger's tail thumped once against the dusty floor. Noah tucked the envelope into his jacket, careful not to bend it. He scanned the vault one last time, memorizing every shelf, every box. The storm outside roared louder again, shaking the mansion's walls. But inside this steel chamber, everything felt still, suspended. He closed the vault door gently, leaving it unlocked for now. Not because he wasn't afraid someone else might find it, but because he couldn't bring himself to shut out the last piece of Evelyn's voice so quickly. As he and Ranger stepped back into the attic, the cold hit them again, sharp and immediate. Noah looked out across the endless boxes and trunks, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Whatever comes next, he said quietly, we're not backing down. Ranger stood tall beside him, chest forward, ears alert, fully understanding the shift in Noah's resolve. They headed toward the staircase, ready to rest, ready to think, ready to face whatever the storm or the world would bring. But as they reached the top step, a pair of headlights cut through the swirling snow outside the mansion. Noah froze. Someone else had arrived at Hollow Ridge, and this time, they weren't coming quietly. Noah froze at the top of the attic stairs, one hand gripping the railing as the beam of headlights cut through the swirling snow outside the mansion. The lights swung across the drifts, bright enough to cast long, trembling shadows along the hallway walls. Ranger stiffened immediately, ears shooting forward, a low rumble building in his chest, not fear, but warning. Noah moved quietly down the stairs, Ranger matching each step. The wooden steps creaked under their weight, but the storm outside drowned out the sound. As they reached the main floor, the headlights disappeared around the corner of the mansion, followed by the crunch of tires on icy gravel. Then the slam of a car door. Then another. Noah's heart sank. He didn't need to see the faces to know who had braved the storm and invaded Hollow Ridge at night. Jared, Melissa, and someone else with them. He reached the foyer just as three figures approached through the blizzard, their shapes blurred behind the frost-covered windows, but Noah recognized Jared's heavy stride and Melissa's fur-lined coat. The third figure, smaller, holding a briefcase, moved with sharp, impatient steps. Ranger stood at Noah's side, silent but coiled like a spring. A fist pounded on the front door. Then Melissa's voice cut through the storm, shrill and angry. "Noah, open this door right now!" Noah didn't move. His jaw tightened, pulse rising. He didn't want this fight. Not tonight, not after everything he'd just discovered. The pounding grew louder. "Noah, we know you're in there!" Ranger let out a deep bark that reverberated through the hall. Noah exhaled slowly and unlatched the chain. The moment he cracked the door open, icy wind burst inside, carrying flakes of snow and the sharp scent of Melissa's perfume. Jared shoved the door wide with a gloved hand. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, pushing past Noah without waiting for permission. "You think you can just sneak off and steal a house? You think we're stupid?" Ranger instantly stepped between them, blocking Jared's path. The dog's teeth weren't bared, but his posture left no doubt. One wrong move and he'd intervene. Melissa entered next, brushing snow from her hair, her expression twisted with disbelief as she surveyed the grand, dimly lit interior. "You have got to be kidding me. This dump? Evelyn left you this place?" The third person stepped inside, a man in a wool coat and polished shoes, holding a black briefcase. His voice was calm but carried a subtle authoritative edge. "Mr. Noah Carter, I'm attorney Daniel Kramer, legal representative for your siblings. We need to discuss the matter of the fraudulent inheritance claim you appear to be making." Noah stared at him. "Fraudulent?" Melissa crossed her arms. "You think anyone's going to believe Evelyn left you a mansion? You barely knew her. We didn't even know she was still alive until last week." Jared jabbed a finger toward Noah. "This isn't yours. It should have gone to the family. To us. And we're not leaving until you hand over whatever paperwork you tricked her into signing." Ranger barked again, louder this time. Jared stepped back reflexively. "Control your dog," Jared snapped. "He's controlled," Noah said quietly. "More than either of you right now." Kramer stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Carter, your mental instability is well documented. Your service record, the medical history, the PTSD episodes, your siblings are prepared to petition the court for emergency conservatorship over you and this estate. If necessary, we will request an evaluation to determine whether you are fit to handle legal responsibilities." Noah felt his stomach drop. The room seemed to tilt slightly, memories threatening to push through, the VA interviews, the endless questions, the knowing looks. Not again. Not like this. Ranger pressed against Noah's leg, grounding him. "This mansion was legally transferred to me," Noah said, voice steady though his pulse raced. "I got the call from Evelyn's lawyer. Everything is documented." Melissa scoffed. "Oh, please. Evelyn was nearly 90. You expect us to believe she was of sound mind?" Kramer adjusted his glasses. "We will subpoena every scrap of paper tied to this estate. If there is even a hint of manipulation—" "No manipulation," Noah said through clenched teeth. Jared stepped closer, towering over him. "Then prove it. Show us the documents." "No," Noah said. The word froze the room. Jared's eyes darkened. "You don't get to say no. This is a family matter." "No," Noah repeated. "This is my home now." Ranger growled, a deep rolling threat. Jared glared down at the dog, but didn't dare step closer. Kramer snapped his briefcase closed. "Very well. We'll take this to court. Expect an injunction by morning. You won't own so much as a doorknob by the time we're done." Melissa smirked coldly. "Enjoy your last night in this icebox." They turned toward the door, stepping back into the storm in a flurry of coats and curses. Jared paused on the threshold to throw one last glare over his shoulder. "This isn't over, Noah." Noah shut the door behind them, sealing out the blizzard, but not the fear. He leaned against the wood, eyes closed. Ranger nudged his hip gently, then rested his head against Noah's thigh. "I know, buddy," Noah whispered, voice trembling. "I know they're coming back, but I'm not running this time." Ranger's tail swept the floor once, slow and reassuring. Noah looked up toward the darkened stairs, toward the attic where Evelyn's letter waited. He wasn't alone anymore. Not with Ranger. Not with the truth written in that vault. And not with the strength he hadn't realized he still carried. But one thing was painfully clear. His family wasn't here for answers. They were here for war. And Hollow Ridge had only experienced the first strike. The mansion felt colder after Noah's siblings slammed the door behind them. Their angry voices faded into the blizzard, swallowed by snow and darkness, but the echo of their threats clung to the walls like frost. Noah stood in the foyer for a long moment, one hand braced against the door, his breath unsteady. Ranger pressed his head against Noah's hip, a silent reminder that he wasn't alone. But the silence inside the mansion grew heavier with each passing second. Noah turned away, rubbing the bridge of his nose. The adrenaline from the confrontation drained quickly, replaced by an ache deep in his chest, the kind that came from old wounds, not fresh ones. Ranger walked beside him as he made his way back toward the grand hall, his boots whispering across the dusty floor. He sat on the bottom step of the staircase, elbows resting on his knees. Ranger settled at his feet, gaze fixed on Noah's face, studying him with that uncanny intuition only a trained K9 could possess. "I thought I was ready for them," Noah murmured. "But hearing them talk about me like I'm broken? Like I don't deserve anything good?" He exhaled a shaky breath. "It hits harder than any blast I've ever felt." Ranger nudged Noah's knee gently, then rested his chin on his boot. Noah closed his eyes. A long, quiet moment passed. Images intruded, memories he rarely allowed through the cracks. A dimly lit VA hallway. A doctor reading notes aloud without ever looking him in the eye. Jared laughing at him at a family cookout, calling him the damaged war hero. Melissa rolling her eyes when he mentioned therapy. The silence on the other end of the phone when he asked for help moving after his injury. Every memory layered over another until he felt their weight pressing on his chest. He inhaled deeply, grounding himself in Ranger's steady presence. "You pulled me out of worse," he whispered to the dog. "Don't let me drown tonight." Ranger answered with a soft whine, nudging closer. Noah leaned back against the stairs, staring up at the ceiling. The chandelier overhead creaked as the storm shook the mansion. The old wood groaned, expanding and contracting under the pressure of the cold. It felt like Hollow Ridge itself was listening, aware of his struggle. Finally, Noah stood. "We need answers," he said quietly. "Real answers. Evelyn didn't go through all that trouble for me to fall apart now." He headed back up the stairs, Ranger trailing close behind. The mansion seemed darker than before, but Noah's steps were firmer, each one fueled by a mix of hurt, determination, and the faintest spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Resolve. They reached the attic again, its cold air biting instantly at his face. Noah crossed the room to the crate of journals. He selected a thicker volume this time, its pages stiff and worn. Ranger lay beside him on the floor as he opened it. The entries were from Evelyn's middle years, her writing sharper, her tone edged with frustration. June 1973. They've demanded I sell the land again. They think I owe them for leaving Mother's estate. They forget they forced me out. They forget their cruelty. I will not surrender what I built alone. Noah swallowed. It mirrored so much of his own story, he felt the truth strike deep. He flipped ahead. March 1978. If they knew what I was building, they would try to take it. They always take. I will protect this place even after I'm gone. One day someone worthy will carry the burden. Worthy. Noah stared at the word for a long moment. Ranger lifted his head, ears forward. I don't know if she was right about me, Noah said, but I know I'm not letting Jared and Melissa tear this place apart. He set the journal aside and reached for the box containing Evelyn's letters. Most were addressed to businesses, banks, and land offices. But near the bottom, he found a smaller envelope with no date. Inside was a folded note. Noah, if they ever come for you, and they will, remember this. You are stronger than their doubts, and braver than their fear. Stand tall. The truth is your armor. Noah closed his eyes, letting the words settle into him like warmth in the freezing attic. He reread them slowly, letting the weight inside his chest ease. Ranger stretched beside him, tail sweeping the dust gently. Stand tall, Noah whispered. Yeah, I can do that. Minutes passed in silence. Only the storm outside spoke, whispering against the roof. Noah set the letter on the table and stared at the open vault door. Then another thought crept in, sharp and unwelcome. His family wasn't going to stop. They had money for lawyers, connections, the willingness to twist the truth until the world bent with them. And they had already weaponized his PTSD once. They'd do it again in court without hesitation. Noah paced the attic slowly, hands clenched into fists. They'll try to paint me as unstable, he said, voice low. They'll drag Ranger into it too. They'll say I'm unfit, dangerous, incapable. Ranger approached him, sensing the rising tension, placing his paw gently on Noah's forearm. Noah stopped pacing, meeting the dog's steady gaze. I'm not letting them take you, he said softly. They're not taking this house. They're not taking our future. Ranger's ears perked, as if agreeing. Noah took a deep breath, letting the storm's roar fade into the background. Tomorrow, he would go to town. Tomorrow, he would find help. Tomorrow, he would fight. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. He sat beside Ranger, leaning against the cold attic wall, staring at the vault that had rewritten the path of his life. Ranger curled beside him, steady and warm despite the chill. And for the first time in years, Noah felt something new beneath the weight of silence. Determination. No longer was he a broken soldier fighting shadows. He was the heir of Hollow Ridge, and he was ready to defend what Evelyn entrusted to him, no matter who stood against him. By morning, the storm began to loosen its grip on the mountains. The winds weakened from a howl to a low moan, and the snowfall eased into light flurries drifting gently across the valley. Hollow Ridge stood frost-covered and silent, its stone walls glittering beneath a pale winter sun. Inside, Noah packed only what he needed: Evelyn's letter, the poem, and a few documents taken from the vault. Ranger watched every movement, tail low but alert. Today we find help, Noah said, fastening his jacket. And not the kind my siblings think they can buy. Ranger trotted to the door, ready. The truck groaned as it started in the cold, each puff of exhaust sending steam into the frigid air. Noah drove carefully down the long, snow-packed driveway. The mansion disappeared behind them, swallowed by pines and morning fog. Ranger sat tall in the passenger seat, watching the road ahead. Silver Creek was the nearest town, small, quiet, tucked between the mountains like it was hiding from the world. As Noah pulled onto Main Street, locals were already clearing snow from their storefronts. Smoke rose from chimneys. The scent of coffee drifted from a small diner. Everything felt normal here, untouched by the chaos brewing in Noah's life. He parked near the sheriff's office, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Ranger jumped out and stayed close at his side. Inside, the warm air hit Noah's face, carrying the scent of old wood, coffee, and worn leather. Sheriff Ben Whitaker sat behind the front counter, sorting paperwork. He looked up the moment Noah entered, his weathered face lighting with recognition. "Noah Carter," Ben said, standing slowly. "I heard you were back in these parts." "Just got in yesterday," Noah replied. Ranger sat neatly beside him, head high. Ben leaned on the counter, studying Noah a moment longer. "You look like you've had one hell of a night." "You could say that." Ben nodded toward Ranger. "And you brought the real hero with you." Ranger wagged his tail once, polite and dignified. "What brings you in?" Ben asked, voice softening with the tone he used only for veterans. Noah took a steady breath. "I need help, Ben. Real help. And I didn't know who else to come to." "Sit," Ben said immediately. "Start from the beginning." Noah explained everything. Evelyn's inheritance, the vault, the storm, the footprints in the mansion, and the confrontation with Jared, Melissa, and their attorney. Ben listened without interrupting, arms crossed, jaw tightening with each detail. When Noah finished, Ben shook his head slowly. "I always knew your siblings had sharp tongues, but threatening you with court manipulation? That's low, even for them." "They'll try to use my PTSD," Noah said quietly. "They've done it before." Ben stepped around the counter. "Noah, listen to me. You've never once been a danger to yourself or anyone else. You're disciplined, you're stable, you're responsible. Anyone who knows you can see that clear as day." Ranger pressed gently against Noah's leg. Ben patted the dog's head. "Ranger here is proof enough. Service dogs aren't matched with unstable handlers." Noah exhaled, a breath that felt like it had been locked in his chest for years. "I need a lawyer," Noah said. Ben nodded. "I know just the one. Grace Harlow. Retired now, but sharp as a tack. She represented Evelyn years ago. Knows that family history better than anyone." "Will she even hear me out?" Noah asked. "For you?" Ben smiled. "She'll make coffee before you finish knocking." They left the station together. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked down the sidewalk. Townsfolk glanced curiously at Ranger, but smiled kindly at Noah. The air was crisp, the sky clearing into a pale blue. Grace's house sat near the edge of town, a cozy blue cottage with icicles hanging from the roof. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a wreath of pine branches hung on the door. Ben knocked twice. Moments later, the door opened, revealing Grace Harlow, silver-haired, wearing a thick green sweater, sharp eyes behind round glasses. She blinked in surprise when she saw Noah. "Noah Carter," she said. "Your Aunt Evelyn told me you'd come one day." She stepped aside. "Come in, and bring the handsome fellow with you." Ranger walked inside first, sniffing politely. Grace motioned Noah to sit at her kitchen table. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." As she poured, Grace studied him. "So, tell me what brought you to my door." Noah repeated the story, this time pulling out Evelyn's letter. Grace read it slowly, her expression softening. "I always knew Evelyn had a plan," she murmured. "But this is bigger than I imagined." She closed the letter gently. "Your siblings will come hard. They'll try to twist everything. But I know how they operate. They've been after Evelyn's assets for decades." "Can you help me?" Noah asked. Grace leaned back, eyes sharp again. "I'm old, not dead, and I will absolutely help you, not for the money, not for the fight, but because Evelyn believed in you, and when that woman believed in someone, she was never wrong." Ranger nudged Noah's elbow, as if echoing the sentiment. Grace continued, "We'll need evidence, proof of Evelyn's state of mind, proof of her intentions, and we'll need witness testimony." "I have her journals," Noah said, "her notes, and documents from the vault." "Good," Grace replied. "And you have something even stronger, the truth." Ben crossed his arms. "I'll back your character in court myself." "And Ranger here," Grace added, smiling at the dog, is a certified service partner. That speaks volumes. Noah nodded, feeling something warm building beneath the storm of worry. Hope, fragile but growing. Grace stood. We'll file our response as soon as the judge sees their petition. And Noah? Yes? You're not fighting alone anymore. Ranger barked softly, sealing the promise. Noah looked between Ben and Grace, two people who believed in him simply because he needed them, and because they respected the man he was, not the man his family painted him to be. Thank you, he said, and he meant it more than any words he'd spoken in years. Outside, the last of the storm clouds drifted away, revealing sunlight shimmering across Silver Creek. Tomorrow, the fight would begin, but today, for the first time in a long time, Noah didn't feel outnumbered. He felt ready. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and bright. Snow still blanketed Silver Creek, but the sky was clear, a deep mountain blue that made every rooftop sparkle. Noah stood outside the courthouse in a clean jacket Grace had insisted he wear. Ranger stood firmly at his side, his vest freshly brushed, his stance steady and proud. People entering the courthouse whispered when they saw them. A few nodded respectfully. Others touched the brims of their hats. Word had spread fast in small-town Idaho. Noah Carter was fighting for his inheritance, for his dignity, and he wasn't alone. Grace Harlow walked up the courthouse steps beside him, a folder tucked tightly under her arm. Stay calm. Answer only what you must, and trust me, she said. You've already won half the battle by showing up with honesty. Noah nodded. I trust you. Ranger nudged Noah's leg with his nose. A reminder. He wasn't going through this alone. Inside, the courtroom was bigger than Noah expected. High ceilings, polished wood benches, and sunlight pouring through tall windows. The judge sat poised at the bench, her expression neutral but sharp. Jared and Melissa were already there, flanked by 3 suited lawyers. Jared wore an expensive coat and the smirk of someone convinced he'd win. Melissa sat rigid, eyes cold, chin lifted like she was looking down at anyone not born wealthy. When they saw Noah walk in, their expressions changed just slightly. Annoyance, disappointment, maybe even fear. Ranger's quiet presence seemed to unsettle them more than Noah ever could. The judge called the court to order. Today's case concerns the petition to contest the will of Evelyn Grant, she said. Petitioners Jared and Melissa Carter claim the beneficiary, Noah Carter, is unfit to inherit and that the will was executed under questionable circumstances. Let us begin. Jared's lead attorney stood tall, papers in hand. Your Honor, he began, we intend to show that Noah Carter is mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and has a long history of emotional volatility. His military service record clearly indicates exposure to high-trauma environments, resulting in severe post-traumatic symptoms. We believe he poses a risk to himself and to the estate. Gasps whispered through the courtroom. Noah remained still. Ranger didn't take his eyes off the attorney. And furthermore, the lawyer continued, we question whether Mrs. Grant was capable of drafting a coherent will. The sudden inclusion of Mr. Carter raises suspicion of manipulation. Grace rose slowly, each movement deliberate but powerful. Your Honor, she said, the petitioner's argument rests on speculation, prejudice, and, quite frankly, personal vendettas. We intend to show the truth. The judge nodded. Proceed. Grace turned to the courtroom, her voice steady. First, let us address the accusation against my client's mental state. She placed a document on the judge's stand. This is Mr. Carter's service dog certification, signed by licensed evaluators. Ranger is matched only to veterans capable of maintaining stable routines and demonstrating emotional steadiness. Mr. Carter passed every assessment. Noah felt Ranger press once more against his leg, as if reaffirming that truth. Grace continued, Second, here is Mr. Carter's medical evaluation from the VA, officially confirming he is of sound judgment, fully autonomous, and in no way impaired in decision-making. She paced in front of the judge's bench. Now let us address the petitioner's claims that Mrs. Grant was manipulated. She opened another folder. This is a video recording, she said, taken by Evelyn Grant's physician 6 months before her passing. In it, Mrs. Grant clearly states her intention to leave her estate to Noah Carter, her great-nephew, whom she believed carried the moral strength, discipline, and integrity her own siblings lacked. Gasps moved through the room again. Melissa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She barely knew him. Grace turned, eyes sharp. Is that so? Grace lifted another sheet of paper. Your Honor, this is Evelyn Grant's legal filing from 18 years ago. It is a notarized document establishing a familial safeguard. In short, Mrs. Grant formally adopted Noah Carter as her legal heir. Not widely publicized, but binding. Her reason? She held up a second page. Because she believed Noah embodied the compassion and loyalty she had spent her life hoping her family would show. Silence fell so thick, it felt like the whole room had been vacuum-sealed. Jared's mouth hung open. Melissa gripped the arm of her chair. The judge leaned forward. Is this adoption verified? Grace nodded. It is. I was present when it was filed. The judge looked at the document for a long, quiet moment. Do the petitioners have a response? She asked. Jared's lawyer stammered. We weren't aware. This can't. It can, Grace cut in. It does, and it shows Mrs. Grant's decision was deliberate. The judge turned to Jared and Melissa. Is there any legitimate evidence you wish to present? Any proof? Not assumptions. The courtroom waited. Jared swallowed. Melissa looked away. Their lawyers muttered among themselves, flipping papers that contained nothing, because they had nothing. Finally, the judge straightened. Then this court finds the will fully valid, properly executed, and legally binding. Noah Carter is the rightful heir to the Hollow Ridge estate and all connected assets. The sound in the room shifted instantly. Whispers of relief, soft claps, murmurs of approval. Ranger barked once, a deep, proud sound, earning a smile from the judge. Jared surged to his feet. This isn't fair. You can't just... The judge raised a hand. Mr. Carter, sit down. This case is closed. Melissa stood as well, her voice cracking. We deserve something, anything. He doesn't know how to manage wealth. He doesn't deserve it. Grace stepped beside Noah, her voice firm but calm. Deserving isn't measured by birthright. It's measured by character. Noah met his sibling's eyes, not with anger, but with something steadier, sadness, acceptance, resolve. Ranger stayed beside him, unwavering. Grace placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. You fought with honesty, she said softly, and the truth won. As the courtroom emptied, Noah stood still, breathing in the moment, breathing in freedom, breathing in justice. For the first time in years, his chest didn't feel heavy. He looked down at Ranger. We did it, buddy, he whispered. Ranger pressed his head into Noah's hand. They stepped into the cold mountain air together, victorious, grounded, and ready for whatever came next. Hollow Ridge was theirs, and so was the future. Winter loosened its grip on the mountains by early spring, revealing patches of green beneath melting snowbanks. The mansion's towering stone walls, once cold and hollow, now echoed with new purpose. Workers came and went through its grand doors, hauling lumber, installing lighting, repairing old wiring that hadn't been touched in decades. The place slowly transformed, room by room, hallway by hallway, into something alive again. Noah stood on the front steps one brisk morning, hands in his pockets, breathing in the fresh air. The sharp scent of pine mixed with the earthy smell of thawing soil. Ranger waited beside him, ears alert as volunteers arrived for another day of helping turn Hollow Ridge into something Evelyn would be proud of. A pickup truck pulled up the long drive. Maggie, the local diner owner, hopped out with boxes of muffins and thermoses of coffee. "Fuel for your folks," she called, smiling. "Thank you, Maggie," Noah said. "You don't have to keep doing this." "Oh, hush. Evelyn helped this town for years. We're just giving a little back." Inside, the dining hall had been completely renovated. Polished floors, long wooden tables, warm lighting. The once empty library now bustled with veterans, service dog trainers, and counselors preparing for the grand opening of the Hollow Ridge Veteran and K-9 Recovery Retreat. Noah stepped inside, Ranger trotting at his heel. The entire left wing had been converted into therapy rooms, quiet spaces, and training areas for veterans learning to work with service dogs. The right wing was living quarters, simple, comfortable, full of light. It wasn't just a mansion anymore. It was a refuge, a place for men and women who felt lost after leaving the uniform behind. A place for retired K-9s searching for new purpose. A place for healing. Ranger paused near the training room, tail wagging as another veteran kneeled to greet him. The man smiled softly, scratching behind Ranger's ears. "Hard to believe this boy saw combat," he said. "He's seen more than most," Noah replied. "But he never stopped choosing the light." The veteran nodded. "He's going to change lives here." "That's the hope." Later that afternoon, Noah walked the snowy perimeter of the property, Ranger beside him. The sun rested low in the sky, painting the mountains in a warm amber glow. The retreat would officially open in 1 week, but already the house felt fuller, laughter echoing through the halls, conversations drifting through open doors, a warmth that had nothing to do with heating vents. They reached the old garden behind the mansion. Spring buds poked through the soil, timid but determined. Ranger sniffed a patch of earth near the fence, tail swishing with interest. "What is it, buddy?" Ranger pawed at the dirt gently. Noah knelt and noticed the corner of a wooden frame sticking out from under the soil. Together, man and dog cleared the dirt, revealing a small, weathered box wrapped in protective cloth. Inside was a photograph. Evelyn, younger, standing proudly beside a military memorial. Beside the photo, a sealed envelope rested untouched. Noah recognized her handwriting instantly. His chest tightened. He opened it carefully. "Noah, if you're reading this, then Hollow Ridge is alive again, and so are you. I always believed you would rebuild more than this house. I believed you would rebuild yourself, and maybe others too. What we build from pain becomes our legacy. You know that truth better than most. Live boldly, and let others find light because you held it high. With all the faith I have left." Evelyn Noah lowered the letter slowly. The wind moved softly through the pines, almost like the mountains themselves paused to listen. He glanced at Ranger, who sat patiently, head tilted. "She believed in us," Noah whispered. "Before I even knew she remembered me, she believed." Ranger nudged his shoulder gently. "Come on," Noah said, standing. "We've got work to do." That night, volunteers and townsfolk gathered in the entrance hall for a small pre-opening celebration. The chandeliers glowed warmly, reflecting off newly polished wood. Laughter rolled through the space, bright and genuine. Grace Harlow raised a glass. "To Evelyn," she said, "and to Noah, who turned her gift into something far greater." The crowd echoed the toast, clinking glasses, clapping Noah on the back. Ranger barked once, cheerful, tail sweeping the floor. When the crowd thinned and the night grew quiet, Noah and Ranger stepped outside to the back balcony. The valley below was peaceful, bathed in moonlight. The sky shimmered with stars. "This place almost swallowed me whole that first night," Noah said. "Now look at it." Ranger sat beside him, leaning slightly into his leg, the same steady reassurance he'd given Noah in the darkest moments of their service. "You ready for what comes next?" Noah asked softly. Ranger answered by resting his head against Noah's hand. Together, they stood in silence. Not the silence of fear or uncertainty, but the silence of peace earned after a long fight. Noah looked out over the valley and felt something settle inside him. Not the heaviness of grief, not the weight of obligation, but belonging. Home. "We finally made it," he whispered. Ranger stayed at his side, unwavering. At Hollow Ridge, reborn, full of light, full of purpose, they had built the beginning of a new legacy. And this time, Noah wasn't carrying it alone. The mansion had found its guardians, and the mountains had found their seal. If you believe Noah did the right thing standing his ground, drop a simple yes in the comments. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's just doing what's right and not backing down. And if you want more stories about courage, land, and the good people who refuse to be pushed around, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one.